What up, guys? Moon Knight Episode 2 is upon us, and not only does it introduce a major character from the Moon Knight comics, but it also gives us some interesting tidbits of information about the mysterious Marc Spector and his backstory. So, let's get right into it. I'm Monty from the MontyVerse, and this is Moon Knight Episode 2, Summon the Suit. The episode begins with us hearing the fight between Moon Knight and the Jackal from the end of last episode, as the camera focuses on sand, giving the illusion of Egypt, but when we pan up, we see that it is the sand in Steven's room. He wakes up running forward, only to be yanked by his ankle restraint. Steven is just coming to again for the first time since the museum bathroom, which means Marc was the one to lay out the sand and put on the restraint to keep Steven thinking he is only dreaming these events. The ankle strap he wore as a means of safety has become a leash, holding him back. Steven goes to the mirror and tries to contact Marc, and this continues the use of reflections that we get all over the place this episode. However, Marc doesn't respond because he wants Steven to try and remain as separate from him as possible. Steven heads to the museum, and as he walks in, the camera spins upside down, representing Steven's life that is in fact about to be turned upside down. Steven sees that the bathroom is actually trashed from last night, and as he reviews footage in JB's security command center, aka just his desk with a bunch of monitors, they see Steven, but not the Jackal that was chasing him. We see that later in the episode, Layla is able to make physical contact with these creatures, so they are tangible to everyday people, but somehow only Marc, Steven, and possibly Harrow can see the creatures. Are they like hellhounds, creatures that you see when you have some kind of connection to death? JB makes a reference to the Hounds of the Baskerville, which is the third of 4 crime novels written by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle featuring his Sherlock Holmes. The plot revolves around the legend of a fearsome diabolical hound of supernatural origin, which is kind of exactly what we got going on over here. The footage shows Steven, aka Marc, during this time, walking out of the bathroom in regular clothes as opposed to the Moon Knight armor we saw him in at the end of last episode, intensely staring into the camera, as if he knows Steven will be watching this footage, as if he knows things are about to get a lot more complicated. Steven gets called into HR, where we are given another reflection on the desk, this reflection again upside down, further keying us into Steven's mental state. He does not know what is real or not, and he has no idea what is happening to him. The person at HR suggests that he seeks out mental help, but says the museum does not want to press charges, even though Steven is approached by 2 officers later in the episode. Is it possible Harrow is behind all of this just to get to Steven? We saw that last episode he has minions working in the museum. It is very possible to assume Steven is saved from being arrested due to Harrow wanting access to him. Steven is forced to leave his name tag, and he sadly places it on the desk, symbolizing his loss of self, and foreshadowing later in the episode when Steven loses his identity to the Marc persona almost completely. Steven goes to talk to his pal Crawley, the human statue, who again is an informant and ally of Moon Knight in the comics. The man remains completely still until Steven gives him a hug, the affectionate gesture getting Crawley to shift his eyes. Steven heads to a few different central London storage facilities until he gets lucky and finds the right one. The person working there recognizing his face. A lot of this episode gives me Fight Club vibes, especially the end of Fight Club, where the narrator is trying to trace Tyler Durden's steps. I know that Fight Club was listed by the showrunner as one of the influences of the series, and it really shows in this episode. The song the employee is playing is Bela Lugosi is Dead by Bauhaus. Bela Lugosi is famously remembered for playing Dracula among many other of his horror film credits. Dracula is indeed a Marvel Comics character and has crossed paths with many supernatural heroes. As the 2 head to the locker, we see the lights are motion activated. Not only is this great for the horror set piece that comes later, but it also is representative of Steven's state of mind. He's completely in the dark, but he is moving towards the light to find answers. The locker is number 43, and if you scan the PR code, it lets you read a free comic, which is Werewolf by Night, number 33. And if you scan the same PR code last week on the sarcophagus in the museum when Steven was talking to the little girl, that would have given you Werewolf by Night, number 32. And these are the first 2 appearances by Moon Knight in Marvel Comics where he takes on the titular werewolf. The inside of unit number 43 is made of reflective material, but it's blurred not to present a clear reflection like normal metal would. As if Marc had done this intentionally to stop the Steven persona from appearing or taking control of the body inadvertently. Steven finds military storage crates, change of clothes, a military folding cot, and a canvas duffel bag. The contents of the bag are that of a traditional spy go bag. The first item that is removed is Marc's pistol, followed by stacks of different currency, these being Chinese and American bills, and a passport that confirms the identity of Marc as Marc Spector. The passport also has the birthday of March 9th, which also happens to be the same birthday as actor Oscar Isaac. In the bag, he also finds the scarab, confirming to him that everything he has been going through was in fact real. The scarab's wings open and it begins to work like a compass, but it is not pointing north, it is most likely pointing to Egypt, which is about southeast of London. The compass also points to Mark as he talks to Stephen in the reflection on the wall. Mark asks Stephen for control, but Stephen does not want to give up control to Mark. Mark begins to explain that he and technically Stephen serve Khonshu. They are his avatar.
I don't normally play this card, but I'm the avatar.
Mark states that he
protect the vulnerable and deliver Khonshu's justice to those who hurt them. Khonshu.
Stephen wants to turn himself into authorities and get put into a mental hospital, so he leaves and the scene becomes something out of a horror movie as Khonshu rapidly approaches Stephen with the clicks getting louder and lights getting closer. Stephen runs into Khonshu and the frame freezes on Stephen like it did in a lot of old Hollywood horror movies. Stephen runs right into Layla, who he sees for the first time upside down. She tracked the phone to his location and reveals that she is Mark's wife and knows about his Moon Knight persona. Stephen has this first conversation with her through the reflection on her motorbike, almost like it represents that she is part of Mark's world. They go back to Stephen's flat and we see Mark's reflection in the fish tank behind Layla, even though Stephen is still at the door. Stephen says that this is his mom's flat, and Layla asks him if they are speaking again. In newer comics, Mark's mother passed away when he was young, but in most versions of Mark's history, he does in fact run away from his past, rebelling against his father's beliefs and turning his back on his family's ideologies. Layla and Stephen both recite poetry from, and I apologize for butchering this, Marceline de Bordes Valmore, who Stephen says is his favorite poet, but Layla states that it is her favorite poet. It is also interesting to note that Layla and Stephen both speak French, and in the next scene, we see that Layla understands hieroglyphs, which is something Stephen was teaching himself. It appears that the Stephen personality shares a lot of the same traits as Layla, but more on that later. She hands Stephen divorce papers, still thinking he is Mark, and saying that he sent those to her, and that he told her to move on. Stephen does not sign the papers, and Mark pleads with him to not get Layla involved. She finds the scarab that Stephen was about to show her and recognizes it as the scarab point to Amit's Ushapti. An Ushapti is a small figure that were deposited in ancient Egyptian tombs with a mummy, generally bearing inscriptions from the Book of the Dead. They represent servants expected to do labors required of the deceased in the land of the dead, and I wonder how this pertains to Amit in the show. Two detectives show up, more accurately detective constables. They forcibly enter Stephen's apartment and find the fake passport, using it as an excuse to take Stephen in. During the car ride, we learn a lot more about Marc Spector when they search his name. They tell Stephen he is an international fugitive, part of a team of mercenaries that hit a dig site in Egypt. All of the archaeologists on the site were taken out by the mercenaries. We see at least 4 bodies in one of those pictures. This, of course, is referencing Moon Knight's origin in the comics, where he was part of a mercenary team led by Raoul Bushman, and when Bushman killed the lead archaeologist, Mark turned against him and Bushman beat Mark, leaving him for dead. This is where Khonshu came in and revived Spector. The detectives take Stephen somewhere, and it is here we learn they work for Harrow, as we see the man's tattoo. As Stephen calls for help, we see that the girl with the soccer ball also has a tattoo, letting us know everyone here is probably part of Harrow's cult. Arthur listens from a walkie to Stephen as he speaks to Mark, who is in the reflection of the car window. He makes his presence known, and Khonshu tells Stephen to break Arthur Harrow's windpipe, throwing a trash can when he doesn't listen. Harrow takes Stephen for a tour of this compound, and he speaks Mandarin to one of his followers as he kicks a soccer ball her way. As Harrow kicks, you can hear rattling, which is pieces of broken glass we know Harrow has in his shoes from last episode. Inside the compound, we hear the song One Grain of Sand by Bob Dylan playing, which is the same song used in the opening of last episode, which featured Arthur Harrow doing that glass-breaking ritual. Stephen chows down on some lentil soup as Harrow begins to explain things to him. He knows so much about Khonshu because he was his previous avatar, his Fist of Vengeance. Fist of Vengeance is one of the nicknames Moon Knight has in the comics, and there have been previous Moon Knight throughout history in some stories as well, so there is a basis for this in the source material. Harrow tells Stephen that he doesn't have to listen to Khonshu. None of the other gods respected him, and they banished him. He explains that Khonshu's justice requires a crime to be committed to punish the guilty, which means someone always has to get hurt. But Amit casts her judgment before any evil is done in the first place. Steven points out the major problem with Harrow's statement, which is that you are always judging an innocent person at this point. This is the flaw in the Minority Report precogs as well, because you are essentially prosecuting people for thoughts as opposed to actions, with no concrete way of knowing they will act on those thoughts. Harrow attempts to talk to Marc, who is there in the reflection on the bread bowl. He tells him that whatever Khonshu promised him is a lie, and he wonders if Khonshu chose Marc because his mind was so easy to break, or because his mind was already broken. In recent comics, we learn Khonshu chose Marc at a young age because his mind was already broken and split, having already developed his dissociative identity disorder. It is never made clear why Harrow is no longer the avatar of Khonshu. Is it because he decided he wanted to do a different brand of justice, or was it because Khonshu ditched him to have Marc serve as his new avatar? We learn this episode that Khonshu is self-serving and manipulative. It is possible that he always had his eye on Marc Spector because the fragility of his mind made him easier to control. Once Harrow realizes his gentle approach is not working, he reaches for his staff, which he reveals is a gift Amit gave to her first avatar, and it contains a fraction of her power. All of his followers begin to back away as the staff begins to glow purple. Layla arrives with the scarab and tells Steven to summon the suit, but he can't, so they make a run for it, where she shows she's able to hold her own in a little bit of the fisticuffs. Arthur Harrow slams his pole into the ground. I know how that sounds, guys, let's just let that one go, and opens a hole, summoning another jackal. The glow of the staff and the magic it produces being purple, which is the same as Agatha's magic from WandaVision. The jackal tackles Steven out of a window, and Khonshu tells him to summon the suit. Steven does this as he performs a superhero landing. Well, sort of. He is now transformed into the Mr. Knight version of the character, showing that this version will be Steven's transformation, while Moon Knight will be Marc's. I know some people will be annoyed by this. The Mr. Knight persona in the comics is a highly intelligent detective type who is skilled in criminology, while this version is played as a joke character. However, I see a lot of potential here. As Marc and Steven eventually come to terms with their situation and accept each other, they can begin fighting crime together, with Steven's Mr. Knight becoming more like his comic book self, using his mind to help, while Marc takes over in fighting situations. After the transformation, Marc makes fun of the look in a mirror reflection and tells Steven that his suit is a ceremonial armor from Khonshu's temple, which again is a nod to the comics, as Marc takes Khonshu's cloak from his temple and uses it in his costume. Steven pulls out two batons from his back, showing that his weapons in this form are more non-lethal compared to the ones we see Steven use later. We also see that the supernatural suit does give the person wearing it enhanced strength and durability as he fights the jackal. Is it just me, or do the jackals remind anyone else of the monsters from the first Scooby-Doo movie? Steven starts speaking some British slang as he takes a boxer's stance and lands a sweet punch, quoting Muhammad Ali. In the comics, Marc Spector trained as a boxer in his youth, and this may be a nod to that. On the side of this bus, we see an advert for the GRC, which is the Global Repatriation Council, featured heavily in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. The sign also says, "Find your better half," which is what Steven does, Marc being the better half to handle this situation. This sign is also our clue as to when the series takes place, because while the GRC was formed post-Blip, the advert lets us know that this is after everyone returned, meaning it is set sometime after Avengers Endgame. The top of this bus has the alphanumeric code WBN 0032, which stands for Werewolf by Night number 32, aka the first appearance of Moon Knight. Steven gives control to Marc as he points out that they have to protect innocent bystanders, and Marc changes into the traditional Moon Knight look, and I love the suit so much. The way it forms, appearing almost as if it is mummifying the host, as all the individual threads form and conform to the wearer. It is such a unique and amazing look for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Marc leads the creature away, and each beautiful shot shows the moon getting bigger, almost showing us that Moon Knight is in control of the situation now. Marc slam dunks the creature onto this pointed spiral and recalls his crescent dart in this cool shot, the crescent-shaped weapon coming from the center of his suit. Marc realizes the scarab is gone, and we see a man pick it up, with Harrow approaching him and killing him, taking the scarab. Now, we know that Harrow has control over the process, and he is able to pick and choose who he takes his soul from, which makes you wonder if that woman from last episode was truly guilty, or perhaps she just didn't serve a purpose to him, and that him and Ahmet are just accruing souls to help revive her. Steven wants control over the body, but Marc refuses, saying that there is usually a wall between them, but now the person in control has more power, which makes you wonder exactly how long Marc has had this Steven Grant persona. if it's like the comic books where he developed him when he was a child. Marc says that they are alive because of Khonshu and that his service is the price he pays, which refers to Khonshu raising Marc from the dead to be his avatar. Marc says after this mission is over, Steven can have control and he will never see Marc again. This is interesting because Marc is the dominant or main persona, but he is willing to let Steven take control. There is basis for this in the comics because Marc does hate his own persona because of the bad things he had done while doing mercenary work. This version could feel the same way, with the Steven persona being everything Marc is not, a personality built around kindness and sensitivity that shares all of the interests of the person he loves. Steven says the wrong thing, which causes Marc to lose his cool and smash the glass repeatedly. Besides all of the years of bad luck he will get from smashing that mirror, Khonshu appears and tells Marc he has no right to change the terms of their agreement, because Marc's body was a corpse when Khonshu found him, so his body belongs to Khonshu, which is a threat that the deity makes in the comics as well on multiple occasions. Khonshu threatens Marc by saying that if he leaves him, his next choice of avatar would be his wife, Layla. Marc continues his mission, stating that if they don't have the scarab, they will just get to Amit's tomb first. Khonshu tells him that he will protect Marc with everything he has because he's too valuable, further hinting that Khonshu values Marc and may have searched him out as opposed to a chance encounter with the deity. A red sheet falls off of a mirror, revealing it is cracked, with Steven in the reflection having a bloody hand, which leads us to believe he punched the mirror in an attempt to escape. We can see he is also wearing a Star of David necklace, as which further hints at Marc's faith, him being the Jewish son of a rabbi in the comics. The camera pans to Marc drowning his frustrations in alcohol as he stands up and opens the curtains, revealing that we are now in Egypt, and this is where the episode ends. I'm really enjoying this series so far, and I loved all of the hints we got this episode towards Marc Spector's backstory, as well as the introduction of Layla. I love her character already, and I can't wait to see more of her as the series progresses. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit the like button and comment down below your thoughts on the episode. If you are new to the channel, subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay up to date on all of our latest content. And until next time, guys, catch you later.